The air in the fuselage of the Ju-52 is thick with the smell of oil, cold canvas, and the sharp metallic tang of fear. Outside, the Russian wind howls, a hungry ghost searching for a way in. Inside, a young German soldier, barely 19, clutches a heavy canvas case to his chest. It's not his letters from home or a spare uniform. It's an MG34. He's been told it's the best machine gun in the world, a masterpiece of German engineering. He runs his gloved finger over the case, feeling the perfect, lethal shape inside. He believes it's his ticket home, the one thing that will keep him and his friends alive. He's been trained on it. He knows its capabilities, and he trusts it, but he's wrong. The real danger wasn't what the Soviets would throw at him. It was the promise this thing made, and the brutal, unforgiving price it demanded from the men who carried it. By the end of this, you'll understand the dark reason why this masterpiece was also a merciless master. You see, after the First World War, the German military had a problem, a big one. The Versailles Treaty had shackled them, limiting their army and their ability to build new weapons. But the generals, the thinkers in the Reichswehr, were already looking past the treaty. They weren't thinking about trenches and stalemates. They were obsessed with a new kind of war, a war of speed, movement, and overwhelming localized firepower. The old machine guns were useless for this vision. They were either light, clumsy things that jammed if you looked at them wrong, or heavy, water-cooled beasts that took a team of horses to move and were as mobile as a barn. They needed something new, something that could march with the infantry, then be set up to hold a whole section of the front line against a desperate counterattack, something that could be mounted on a tank, or even shot at an airplane from the back of a truck. They wanted one gun to do it all, the Einheitsmaschinengewehr, the universal machine gun. It was an audacious goal, and when the designers at Mauser-Werke presented the MG34, the generals thought they had found it. On paper, it was a revolution, a sleek, almost beautiful weapon that could spit out an astonishing 900 rounds a minute. They believed this gun would be the beating heart of their blitzkrieg, the sharp point of the spear. Then they took it to Russia, and the paper logic died in the mud and the snow. On paper, the MG34 was perfect. It was the first true general-purpose machine gun the world had ever seen. With its bipod attached, it was a light machine gun, perfect for a squad on the move, providing a mobile base of fire. Slap it onto its Lafette 34 tripod, and it transformed into a medium machine gun, capable of laying down devastating, sustained and accurate fire over hundreds of yards. You could even mount it on a simple anti-aircraft tripod and send a stream of lead into the sky, a last-ditch defense against low-flying aircraft. The rate of fire was incredible, a high-pitched ripping sound that was terrifying to anyone on the receiving end. And the key to that sustained fire was the quick-change barrel. A well-trained crew could swap out a red-hot barrel in seconds, keeping the gun in the fight indefinitely. The crews who first trained on it loved it. It felt solid, precise, and powerful. It was a piece of industrial art, and they were proud to be its masters. The enemy feared it. That sound, Hitler's buzzsaw they'd later call it, though the name really belonged to its successor. But the MG34 wrote the first chapters of that legend. It was designed for a clean, fast war, a war of maneuver, but the advantage came with a bill paid in brass, sweat, and seared flesh. The first dark reason was the most obvious one, the one that started counting the moment the first trigger was pulled. It was a logistical black hole. This masterpiece ate ammunition like nothing else. That incredible 900 rounds per minute rate of fire sounds great in a briefing, but on the battlefield it meant a standard 50-round belt of ammunition vanished in just over 3 seconds. A 250-round belt, which was a heavy, awkward load for one man, was gone in under 20. A gunner could burn through his entire basic combat load in a single, frantic engagement. And then what? The machine gun, the centerpiece of the squad's defense, was just a useless piece of metal and wood. The constant demand for ammunition created a frantic, dangerous dance. The assistant gunner, the Nummer 2, was in a state of perpetual panic, trying to feed belts, link new ones together, and keep the ammo cans close. Every time the gun fell silent, the squad held its breath, praying the next belt was ready. War punishes hesitation, and the MG34 forced its crews to hesitate again and again, waiting for the very thing that gave it life. It wasn't just a gun, it was an insatiable beast, and its appetite often left its crew starving and exposed. And here's the part that's even worse. The belts used non-disintegrating metal links. After firing, the crew was left with a long, clanking snake of empty brass links that had to be collected and reloaded by hand, a tedious, time-consuming process that was almost impossible to do correctly in a dark, freezing foxhole. It wasn't just a gun, it was an insatiable beast, and its appetite often left its crew starving and exposed. And that was only the first problem. The second dark reason was a direct consequence of its masterpiece engineering. It was a prima donna in a mud wrestling contest. The MG34 was a finely tuned instrument. Its internal parts were machined to incredibly tight tolerances. This made it smooth and reliable in a clean laboratory or on a parade ground. But the Eastern Front was not a parade ground. It was a quagmire of mud, dust, snow, and ice. That precision engineering became its greatest weakness. A little grit, a bit of mud, a splash of water from a puddle, and the whole thing could seize up. Imagine you're in a trench outside Stalingrad during the autumn Rasputitsa, the season when the rain turns the ground into a greasy, bottomless soup. You set the MG34 on the fire step, and the stock immediately sinks into the muck. You lay down a burst, and the spray from the muzzle kicks more dirt and filth back into the action. The enemy charges, you pull the trigger, and you get a click. A single, horrifying, impotent click. While the Soviet soldiers are getting closer, you're frantically trying to field strip a weapon that was never designed to be taken apart with frozen, muddy fingers. The very quality that made it a masterpiece made it fragile. It demanded a cleanliness that war simply does not allow. But even when it was clean and fed, the MG34 had another, more personal way of turning on its crew. The third dark reason was the lie of the quick change barrel. Yes, in theory, a crew could change the barrel in seconds, but that theory was written by someone who'd never done it under fire. After a minute or two of sustained fire, that barrel wasn't just hot, it was glowing cherry red. To change it, the gunner had to expose himself, flip a latch, and pull this white-hot piece of metal out of the gun with his bare hand, protected only by a thick asbestos glove that was often frayed or wet. Then the assistant had to slam a new, cold barrel in, all while bullets were cracking overhead. It was a moment of pure, focused terror. Enemy snipers knew to watch for this. They knew the gun would fall silent, and they knew a man would have to stand up to make it work again. At night, that cherry-red barrel was a target marker, a beacon that screamed, "Shoot here!" to every enemy with a rifle. The gunner would feel the intense heat radiating through the glove, a painful, searing reminder of his vulnerability. One fumble, one dropped barrel, and you were left with a dead gun and a very short life expectancy. Many crews learned a terrible lesson. It was better to stop firing before the barrel got too hot, to ration their own firepower, just to avoid that deadly exposed moment. The feature that was supposed to give them infinite fire instead taught them the paralyzing fear of running out of time, and that constant gnawing fear was amplified by the fourth dark reason, the crushing weight of being the masterpiece. The MG34 was not a light weapon. On its own, with its bipod, it weighed over 26 pounds. That's just the gun. Then you add the ammo. A single 250-round belt in its ammunition can weigh another 12 pounds, and you were supposed to carry several. Then you had the spare barrel, the tools, the tripod if you were in a heavy roll, the gunner's personal weapon, and the assistant gunner's load. A two-man MG34 team was often staggering under a combined load of over 100 pounds. Try carrying that through the deep snow of a Russian winter, or the thick, mud-choked hedgerows of Normandy. Try running with it across an open field under artillery fire. This weight was a silent killer. It slowed the squad down. It made the men exhausted before they even saw the enemy. It meant they couldn't keep up with the fast-moving panzers the gun was supposed to support. The universal machine gun was often the one thing that couldn't move universally. It was an anchor, tying its crew to the ground, draining their strength, and eroding their will to fight before the first shot was even fired. It was a masterpiece that its own men could barely carry. All of these problems, the appetite for ammo, the fragility in the dirt, the terror of the barrel change, the soul-crushing weight, they all pointed to another, more insidious issue. The fifth dark reason was this. The MG34 was a gun that demanded an expert. It was complicated. The trigger mechanism, with its dual function for semi-auto and full-auto fire, was finely tuned. Disassembling it for a deep clean required specific knowledge and tools. In the hands of a well-trained, experienced crew, it was a symphony of death. But by 1943, where were those experienced crews? They were dead, wounded, or frozen to death outside Moscow. They were being replaced by 18-year-old boys from farms in Bavaria who had never held a rifle until a month ago. Imagine being that boy. You're handed this masterpiece, this beautiful, complex, and terrifyingly expensive piece of hardware. Your sergeant shows you how to load and fire it once, maybe twice. Then the artillery starts. The gun jams. You don't know why. You don't know which part to pull, which lever to press. You're terrified of breaking it, of being the one who lost the squad's most important weapon. The masterpiece becomes a clumsy, unpredictable club in the hands of the terrified. The German military had built a weapon that required a level of individual skill and training that a nation at war Bleeding men at an unprecedented rate simply could not sustain. And all of these human and mechanical failings led to the final, most damning dark reason. The MG34 was a solution for a war that didn't exist. It was designed for a doctrine of perfect, clean maneuver warfare where everything went according to plan. But war is the empire of chaos. It's mud, dust, confusion, and exhaustion. The German command assumed their technological superiority would overcome these messy realities. They believed a superior machine would create superior soldiers, but the opposite was true. The MG34 demanded a superior environment that the battlefield could never provide. It punished its users for the chaos that is the very nature of combat. The doctrine was wrong. The assumption that a piece of Jing-Mi machinery could function in the filth and fury of a combined arms battle was a fatal miscalculation. The gun was a masterpiece, yes, but it was a masterpiece for a parade ground, not for a world on fire. It was built for the swift, decisive victory of 1940, not the grinding, attritional nightmare of 1943, and the men who carried it paid the price for that arrogance. So we return to that young soldier in the Ju-52 clutching his canvas case. He lands in Russia. He and his team set up their position. The first Soviet attack comes, and he unleashes the beast. The sound is incredible. A terrifying roar that tears the advancing infantry to shreds. He feels a surge of power. This is the masterpiece he was promised. But the attack doesn't stop. The belts disappear. The barrel glows. The mud finds its way into the action. He sees the enemy getting closer, and he feels the weight of the gun, the weight of the empty ammo cans, the weight of his own fear. He fumbles with a searing hot barrel, his hands shaking, and understands the terrible truth. The dark reason the MG34 was a masterpiece with a fatal cost is that its very perfection made it fundamentally unsuited for the imperfection of war. It was a brilliant solution to a theoretical problem that demanded a level of logistical support, environmental cleanliness, and tactical perfection that no frontline unit could ever realistically achieve. The lesson was so brutally learned that it directly led to the MG42, a gun that was deliberately made cruder, simpler, and more robust. They traded artistry for reliability. War punished the assumption that a masterpiece could survive in the mud, and the men in the machine gun crews paid the price.